Welcome back to part 2 of the one use challenge. That is, we are trying to figure out how many times we can beat Pokemon Leaf Green while only using each Pokemon in a major battle one time. So we use a Pokemon, it's gone. On the screen you can see my list of Pokemon here. In red are the ones I used last run, yellow are the ones that are unavailable to us in Leaf Green, and then white is ones we haven't used. So we have used quite a bit, but there's still quite a few good Pokemon left to work with, so hopefully this goes well this time. You guys see the other rules on the screen there, and if you missed episode 1, definitely go back and check that out with the link above. You don't want to watch this one without watching the other one first. This episode starts off with us having used about 45 Pokemon, and this time we went with Squirtle as our starter. For this first rival battle, we are going with Spearow and Kakuna, and we're going to see how this one goes. For this battle, we lead off with our Spearow, and Gary leads off with his Pidgey. Pretty much just going back and forth with Peck and Tackle, and we do get the better of this Pidgey, but we've taken a lot of damage at this point. Luckily, next up, Gary has a Bulbasaur and we have a super effective move, so we take a Tackle and kill it easily with 2 Pecks, giving us a win and only using 1 Pokemon to start. Next up is the Brock fight, and this is pretty much the same as the first run. Last time we had Bulbasaur, this time Squirtle. The outcome is not going to be much different here. We have a Kakuna in the background, but we're not going to need it. Squirtle has Water Gun at this point, so we easily one-shot the Geodude. And then when the Onix comes in, same thing. It does outspeed us, but we can kill it in one hit with Water Gun, and we're on our way with another win and only 1 more Pokemon used. Next up is the dreaded Rival 2 fight. This time we need 4 Pokemon, so since we don't have too much left, we got a weird team here. Jigglypuff, Kakuna, Zubat, and Paris. Doesn't really look the best, but it's kind of like what I could put together at this point of the game, and we're hoping it works out here. So we lead off with Jigglypuff, and we got that Mega Kick on it. It's a nice stab move at this point of the game. Mega Kick is going to be enough to 2-shot the Pidgeotto, and luckily we can break through that Sand Attack. Rattata comes in, and then we hit it with a Mega Kick again. This time its defense isn't high enough, so we can one-shot. Third up is an Abra, and since we know this thing can only teleport, we decide to take advantage and raise our defense up to the max. So we hit Defense Curl, I think 5 or 6 times here, and then we go for a Mega Kick, which is going to one-shot the Abra. So we're doing really well here. Jigglypuff has powered through this team. We do only have 1 Mega Kick left here, but Bulbasaur puts us to sleep. Luckily we do wake up fairly quick, but Mega Kick isn't enough to kill, and we don't really have anything else to damage it. So only thing we can do before we die is try to get a disable off, but it ends up finally taking us out. So at this point, I feel like, the battle's in the bag, and then some weird stuff just starts to happen here. So we got Kakuna, gets hit by Sleep Powder. It can't really do much damage. With Poison Sting, we get the Bulbasaur into red, but it keeps putting us to sleep and takes us out. So again, I'm still thinking no problem. We send in Zubat, and somehow Bite doesn't kill from here, and then he gets us to sleep again. And at this point is when I start freaking out, because he hits us with a Leech Seed, and then he just starts gaining a bunch of health back, and we can't really do much about it. So I sped this part of the battle up, and I decided to switch into Paris because we can't have this thing getting too much health, and at least Paris can't be hit by Leech Seed. So we do get put to sleep, but it can't get any health back anymore. So basically we just have to try and wake up, go for a Stun Spore, get this thing stuck, and finally we do wake up, but then it puts us back to sleep again. So again, we're speeding this part up. It's a little bit slow here, but we do end up getting the Paralyze, and then we can just use Scratch a few times until we do take it out. So we had to use all 4 Pokemon, unfortunately. I don't know if I could have played that better somehow, but we'll take the win. Up next is our battle with Misty, and this time we're going with Fearow and Wartortle both at level 20. So this is a decent team. I think we shouldn't have too much of a problem. Fearow isn't amazing at this point with the moveset, so we decided to start with it. We go for a Fury Attack, which only hits twice unfortunately, and then we get hit with a Water Pulse. Second Fury Attack does miss, but then on the third one we get a crit and take it out. When the Starmie comes in, we don't really have much we can do, so we go for a Pursuit. Water Pulse is going to do quite a bit of damage, while Pursuit doesn't do a whole lot, and then we're taken out by a Swift. Luckily though, our Wartortle does have Bite, and we can take Swift pretty well. So Bite looks like it's going to do 2 shot worth of damage, and she can't really hit us with any moves. Unfortunately, we don't get it in 2 shots, but the third one is able to take it out and give us a decent win, only using 2 more Pokemon. Alright, we're in Vermilion City and we've got our Rival 3 fight. This one is usually pretty challenging as well. So we've got a team of 4 with Mr. Mime, Nidorino, Bellsprout, and Clefable. This one looks a lot better than our last Rival fight team. So we'll see what we can do with this. We'll lead off with Clefable. So Gary leads off with his Pidgeotto. We go in with our Clefable. It gets right to work with some Sand Attack, but we make it fall in love and just start going with Double Slap. Unfortunately, at this point, our accuracy is pretty low, so we had to speed this part up as both members kept missing, but we do end up taking it out. Raticate, same thing. We hit the Attract and we go for some Double Slaps. This one doesn't take quite as long, and it doesn't really do too much damage to us other than a Hyper Fang, and we can take it out with still a good amount of health left. Third up is a Kadabra. At this point, we go for Attract twice and we miss. Our accuracy is like 5 stages down. I didn't even realize because of the Sand Attack and Kinesis. So we basically miss every move and it takes us out. Next, I decided to go into Bellsprout, but obviously this was a bad play because it uses Confusion and one-shots us. I don't really want to use Mr. Mime yet, so we go into Nidorino, and luckily it decides not to use Confusion this time, so we can get a Poison Sting off. We're basically trying to get this thing poisoned so it does die eventually. We do hit the poison, and for some reason it is just not hitting Confusion on us, so we hit a Peck and we can take it out. Last up is the Ivysaur. We go for some Pecks. They're not actually doing too much damage, but this thing decides to put us asleep and then right away use Leech Seed. And at this point, I'm already scarred from the last battle, so we're not messing around with that. We switch into Mr. Mime, we go for a Confusion, and we can take it out for the win. So we did have to use all 4 Pokemon, but it's better than taking a loss. Next up is our battle against Lieutenant Surge, and I may have got a little ahead of myself with this one and only brought 2 Pokemon. I was feeling pretty confident with Onix, thinking like he doesn't really have anything to hit me, but the problem was that I forgot about this Voltorb. So when he puts the Voltorb in, it immediately goes for a Sonic Boom, and then I kind of just started panicking because Onix doesn't actually have a lot of health. Luckily, we can get 2 digs in before we get taken out, but by the time the Voltorb is done, we're only at 12 health, and I'm a little bit scared at this point. Luckily though, Pikachu doesn't really have anything to touch us, and it goes for a double team, and then we hit our dig, so it's all good there. When the Raichu comes in, it tries to double team as well, but Onix does not want to miss, so we hit a first dig. It looks like 2 is probably going to do it, but unfortunately we get paralyzed. The lucky thing is the quick attack is just not doing enough damage, and we do hit that second dig, and that'll give us a much needed win with only 1 more Pokemon used. After getting through Rock Tunnel, we arrive in Lavender Town and our Rival 4 fight. This time he's got 5 Pokemon, so we bring a team of Voltorb, Vulpix, Golbat, Sandslash, and Gyarados. I figured that Voltorb is pretty necessary since Gary has a Pidgeotto and a Gyarados, so we lead off with Voltorb and get a Spark off. Unfortunately, it does hit us with a Sand Attack, so it caused us to miss, but we do get the Paralyze and end up taking it out. Next up is the Gyarados, and we only have 6 health left, so we need a hit here, and we miss again, which is really upsetting at this point. I kind of paused for a bit, just kind of in disbelief, but all good. We decide to go into Sandslash here. This Gyarados is paralyzed, so we kind of decide our best play is Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb does not have the best accuracy, but it's going to lower his speed, and we just need to hit him 3 times while he's getting stuck in paralyzation and thrashing, which doesn't do too much damage. So we take out the Gyarados with not too much issue here. I actually forgot to turn on set mode for a lot of these, so if you're wondering why I'm not switching or why it's popping up, that's why. So we're just declining it anyways to make it like set mode, but basically Sandslash had to stay in and Razor Leaf is quickly going to take it out. So next up we go into Vulpix. We set up our Confuse Ray and our Will-O-Wisp, and basically we just got to stall this thing out. It puts us to sleep, but that's not really a huge issue here as our damage is being dealt by that Confusion and that Burn. So we do end up taking a Razor Leaf, but go into the next Pokemon with some pretty good health. The Growlithe, same thing. We just go for a Confuse Ray and Quick Attack. Unfortunately, we can't burn it, but quick attack is doing enough damage where we can get into red. Unfortunately though, it finally uses roar and brings out the Gyarados, which is something I didn't want to use if I didn't have to. But since Gary had a Kadabra left, I figure we may have had to use Gyarados anyways, so Gyarados comes in and 2 bites will do the trick, and that's going to hand us our win, and we actually didn't end up using the whole team, so not too bad. Next up, we're in Celadon City and our first Giovanni battle. This time we've got 3 Pokemon to work with, so we go with Parasect, Machop, and Hitmonchan. I know he's got rock types, so we need a good grass type, and then he's got that Kangaskhan, so fighting types won't hurt. Parasect starts it off for us against an Onix. An Onix surprisingly tanks a Bullet Seed, even though we did only hit twice, but we do hit another one right after and take it out pretty easily. Next up is a Rhyhorn. Rhyhorn kind of suffers the same fate. We get a crit on our first Bullet Seed and the second hit is going to take it out. So we're doing pretty well here. When the Kangaskhan comes in, I decide that we're not going to be able to take it out probably, so we just try to poison it. But unfortunately, we missed 2 poison powders and then 1 Mega Punch is going to take out our Parasect. No problem though, we go into Machop, who's got low kick. Unfortunately, we get outsped, but he luckily survives it with 4 HP. And then the next turn, he uses Tail Whip for some reason, and 2 low kicks is enough to take him out. Last thing to do before leaving Celadon City is take on Erica, and we've got 3 Pokemon choices. So we go with Golbat, Pinsir, and Hitmonchan. Golbat is pretty much the best Pokemon for this battle as it has super effective moves and they can barely touch us. So we lead off with Golbat, of course. And a wing attack looks like it's going to 2-shot. We do get paralyzed, but the paralyze isn't going to stall us this time and we can take out that victory bell. Second up is a Tangela. Same thing. We just go for a wing attack. We haven't got stuck yet and it does again look like it's going to 2-shot. Tangela can barely touch us with Giga Drain and then we take it out with another wing attack. So when the Vileplume comes in, it can't really touch us. Again, it's only got poison and grass type moves. Wing attack is going to be enough to 2-shot, and surprisingly we don't get stalled by paralyzation at all in this battle. So really nice win, and we only used Golbat. After a long trek to Fuchsia City, we have arrived and it's time for our battle with Koga. This time we got 4 Pokemon, Slowbro, Ninetales, Haunter, and Venomoth. So I think this is a pretty decent team. We've got some psychic types. Hopefully we can just not get poisoned too early. So we lead off with Slowbro. We take a Sludge and knock out the first Coughing with a Psychic. Next up is a Muck. We go in with another Psychic. This time we can't kill it in one hit and we do end up getting poisoned, which is pretty unfortunate. So I'm hoping Slowbro can survive long enough to take away this battle. Third up is another Coughing, which we easily one-shot, and we've got a decent amount of health going into this Weezing. So the Weezing does hit a Sludge, and I'm really surprised we tanked a Sludge from that health. We survived with 3 hit points and we one-shot the Weezing. So I didn't really expect Slowbro to be able to solo this gym, but we'll take it. Next up, we're in Saffron City for another rival fight, and these do not get any easier, especially with Gary having a fully evolved starter. So we brought our best team of Magnemite, Dragonair, Pinsir, Hitmonchan, and Blastoise. So let's see what we can do with this team. We're leading off with our electric type against Gary's Pidgeot. So we got Magnemite with a Thunderbolt. We do hit a Thunderbolt on the first try, and it is enough to one-shot the Pidgeot here. Next up, Gary sends in a Growlithe. We don't want to stay in and take a fire attack, so we're going to switch into Dragonair here. Dragonair is going to be able to wall these fire moves, and we do have Dragon Rage. Unfortunately, it's not quite enough to 2-shot, but after 2 hits of Dragon Rage, the Growlithe decided to use Takedown, and the recoil is going to be enough to take it out. Next up is a Gyarados. We decide to stay in and try to paralyze this thing, so we get off a Thunder Wave while surviving a Dragon Rage, and then we fire back with one of our own. After this, we do end up taking a death to Twister, but now the Gyarados has lower health and is paralyzed, so Magnemite can come in and finish it easily with the Thunderbolt. After that, Gary sends an Alakazam, and I decided to try to status it. Thinking back now, I probably should have just gone for Thunderbolt, but we had 3 back-to-back misses of Supersonic, and then we do get hit by a Future Sight, which is going to one-shot us. That's okay though, Blastoise can come in and easily take this thing out with a couple bites, and we do get a crit on the second one, which is really nice. Next up, Gary's got a Venusaur. This will be his last Pokemon. We decide not to switch here and just try to get some chip damage, knowing that Blastoise can't really do anything else. So we get a few Mega Punches off and get it in a good range for a kill. So we decide to go in with Pinsir and use Seismic Toss. Unfortunately, the Venusaur does get us asleep and we just cannot wake up. I think it was 3 or 4 turns of staying asleep. So it's all up to Hitmonchan. We go for an Ice Punch and somehow an Ice Punch is not enough to kill from this range. So it really scared me here, but we don't get that Razor Leaf crit and we just barely scrape by, winning this battle and using every single one of the Pokemon we had. Immediately after this fight, we have our second fight with Giovanni, and this team's not really that great, but we have to do what we can here. So we got Slowpoke, Tentacruel, Machoke, and Poliwhirl for this fight. So not the greatest team, but hopefully it can do the trick. We decided to lead off with Slowpoke, and it doesn't have Psychic like the Slowbro did, so it's really not doing as much damage as I wanted in this battle. We go back and forth with a few confusions. Eventually we do get the better of this Nidorino, but we're poisoned and we're at a low enough health where the next poison is going to take us out. So Nidorino goes down, but then when he switches into Nidoqueen, we immediately die to the poison. Next up, we decide to send in Tentacruel, thinking that this fully evolved water Pokemon is our best bet. Looks like Surf is going to 2-shot, but Nidoqueen gets a Paralyze on the Body Slam. For some reason, instead of hitting another Body Slam, she goes for Double Kick, Poison Sting, Double Kick, which should have gave us an opportunity, but we got stuck in Paralyzation 2 or 3 times there. Poliwhirl then comes in and can't quite finish with a Surf, but we take a Double Kick nicely and finish her off. Next up, he sends in his Kangaskhan. We decide to go for Hypnosis, thinking Surf won't really do much damage to this thing. We do take a Mega Punch, but the second Hypnosis does hit, and that gives us a free switch into Machoke. So Machoke has Low Kick here, and we just have to kind of hope this thing stays asleep. Unluckily it wakes up, but it just uses Rage, which isn't too bad. So we take a few Rages and take it out with Low Kick. Last up is a Rhyhorn, and luckily Low Kick is enough to one-shot it, and that gives us the win. Unfortunately though, we did have to use all of our Pokemon again. Next thing to do in Saffron City is to take on Sabrina, and we've got a team of 4 here with Haunter, Persian, Snorlax, and Eevee. We decide to take a note out of Ash's book and lead with a Haunter, but this time our Haunter does a lot better than his does. So we lead off with Haunter, go in right with a Shadow Punch, and it is enough to one-shot the Kadabra, which is nice. Mr. Mime is up next, and Mr. Mime survives a Shadow Punch surprisingly, and then hits back with Psybeam, taking out our Haunter. So not too good there, I wasn't really expecting that, but we decided to go in with Eevee. We go for a Quick Attack, but she decides to use a Hyper Potion, and then when we switch to Bite, she uses Calm Mind. So we can't really get too much damage, but Eevee doesn't really take much damage here. It takes a Psybeam fairly well, and then we can finish it off with one more Quick Attack. Third up is Venomoth, and all we can do is just Quick Attack a few times. It actually can't do too much damage to us, so Eevee gets a lot of damage off before finally fainting. And then we can go into Persian. So Persian, I figured could kill from here with Cut. Unfortunately it doesn't, and then she is going to use another Hyper Potion. So I use Cut again. I realize that it's not going to be enough to 3-shot, so I decide to switch to Hyper Beam and we can finally take it out. Last up is Alakazam. We do have to recharge, but luckily for us it uses Future Sight twice, and then another Hyper Beam is enough to one-shot the Alakazam. That gives us the win, and we didn't have to use Snorlax. After arriving in Cinnabar Island, it's time for a battle with Blaine, and we've got a couple different water types here. We're kind of running out of options, but there are a lot of water types in this game, which is good for us. So we go with our team of Kabuto, Seaking, Dratini, and Seal. I start off with Kabuto because if I do get another run, we won't have Kabuto anyway. So that makes quick work of a Growlithe with Surf. The Arcanine comes in though, and it does flinch us with a Bite and then take us out with Fire Blast. So Kabuto didn't really do as much as I wanted. Next up, we go into Dratini, and we use a Thunder Wave to try to paralyze it. It does hit first, but we can just survive it. And then we do get off a Surf before it finishes off us with a takedown. Next up, I decide to stop fooling around. We go into Seaking. A Surf is going to finish the Arcanine from here. Blaine then sends in a Ponyta, who again gets one shot by Surf, so Seaking is looking pretty good. Last up, he's got a Rapidash, and it does use Fire Blast a few times, but we can take that hit pretty well. And Surf is going to 2-shot, but Blaine decides to use a couple different Hyper Potions here, pretty much just stalling the inevitable, and then we do eventually take it out with 2 Surfs to give us the win. And we use 3 Pokemon, but not too bad. We are now back in Viridian City. It's time for our final gym battle. This one's going to be difficult, but we got a team of 5 with pretty much all water and grass type Pokemon. So we got Kabutops, Seal, Venomoth, Snorlax, and Tangela. So this team should be good enough to handle it. So we lead off with Kabuto. He's got a Rhyhorn. 1 Surf is easily going to take him out. Next up, he decides to send in another Rhyhorn. I'm not sure why he did that, but again, we take it out with 1 Surf. Third up is a Dugtrio, and this one does outspeed us, but we take an Earthquake fairly well and 1-shot it again with Surf. So Kabutops putting in good work. When the Nidoqueen comes in, we can't quite 1-shot it, unfortunately, and then it does take us out with an Earthquake. Next up, I go into Seal, and the Seal should be able to finish it, but he does use a Hyper Potion. So Surf looks like it's going to 2-shot. We go for another one. Earthquake doesn't kill us, and the Surf does take out the Nidoqueen. Last up is Nidoking, and unfortunately it is faster than us and takes us out. Third up, I go into Venomoth, and I didn't really think Psybeam would do that much damage, so I decided to put it to sleep. But then when I do use Psybeam, I see that it does pretty much half its health. So even though Giovanni uses a full heal, we can just use 1 more Psybeam to take it out. And that gives us a pretty easy win with only 3 Pokemon used. Last thing to do before we head to the Pokemon League is battle Gary one more time. So we've got a team of 6 this time, and Gary's got a team of 6. So this is going to be a pretty good battle. We've got Magneton, Snorlax, Dugong, Rapidash, Dugtrio, and Aerodactyl. So this is a pretty good team. We lead off with Magneton, knowing he loves to lead with that Pidgeot, and 1 Thunderbolt is going to be enough to take it out. Next up, he sends in his Growlithe, so we decide to switch out. We don't want to rinse Magneton just yet. So we go into Dugong. Dugong comes in, and 1 Surf is going to do the trick against this Growlithe. Next up, Gary decides to send in his Rhyhorn for some reason, so we just use Surf and take it out in 1 shot. Next, he goes into Venusaur. I decide to use an Ice Beam and just stay in. We take a Razor Leaf decently well, and Ice Beam just doesn't do as much damage as I thought. I definitely thought it would do half, but Dugong goes down to another Razor Leaf. Next up, I decide to go into Rapidash, and I figure from here Fire Blast should do the trick, and somehow the Venusaur survives it. So I don't know if this thing is just extra bulky, but he goes for a Synthesis, and then 1 more Fire Blast will do it. Next up is a Gyarados, so we decide to use Toxic just to make sure this thing will die eventually. We actually survive a Hydro Pump surprisingly, and we can get a little bit more chip damage before it takes us out with a second one. After this, I bring back in Magneton. This is the reason I wanted to save it. So Gyarados is definitely in range for a kill. Thunderbolt is going to be enough to take it out from this range. Last up is the Alakazam. We decide to Thunder Wave it. I know it has Synchronized, but if we can get it slower, that's the Alakazam's main thing, is speed. We can get the Paralyze off, then even if Magneton dies, we have somebody else who can come in. So I try a Tri-Attack. It doesn't do as much as I wanted. I decide to switch to Thunderbolt. It looks like maybe it does a little bit more damage, but then he disables my Thunderbolt. So we try a Tri-Attack once more, but he hits first with the Psychic and takes us out in 1 shot. Last up, it took me a while to decide who I was going to send in here, because I'm trying to think, who do I want to save in case I get another run, or for the Elite Four. We decide to go into Aerodactyl and use Ancient Power, and that'll finish off the Alakazam, and that gives us a win, and we're on to the Pokemon League. Alright, it's time for the Elite Four, and we've got a pretty good team here of Zapdos, Flareon, Snorlax, Lapras, and Dragonite. So this is a pretty solid team. I decided to save these guys for this because obviously this is the most important. We're going to use the same team for all of the Elite Four members and the champion. So first off, we lead off with our Zapdos against a Dugong. We go for Thunderbolt, and it doesn't quite kill the Dugong in 1 hit, surprisingly. But she's just going to go ahead and use a full restore, and we're going to keep using Thunderbolt. Eventually, we are going to get the better of this Dugong after a couple rounds of that, and no problem. Next up, she's going to go into Slowbro, and Slowbro, I guess, isn't quite as bulky as Dugong because we can kill it in 1 shot with Thunderbolt this time. Third up is Lapras. Lapras, I didn't think I could one-shot with Thunder, so I decided to use Thunderbolt anyways. It does maybe 2/3 of the health and we get the Paralyze. So only thing I have to do here is break through the confusion and we just can't do it. It hits us with an Ice Beam. We hit ourselves in confusion twice and looking like we're gonna die, but we finally snap out of confusion to take out this Lapras. So Zapdos is putting some good work. Jinx comes in and we hit it with a Thunderbolt, but it survives that and finishes off us with an Ice Punch. Next up we go into Flareon. Flareon can finish off the Jinx with a Flamethrower, no problem. And then last up, she's got a Cloyster. We go for Overheat knowing that Cloyster has basically no special defense. We missed the first one but hit the second one and it is enough to one-shot. And that gives us a pretty easy win against Lorelei. Next up is our battle with Bruno, and we've got pretty much the perfect Pokemon against Bruno, which is Dragonite, as it has flying and water type moves. So against the Onix we can Surf to one-shot it. Next up he sends in Hitmonchan and we've got Aerial Ace. It does kill the Hitmonchan in one hit, which is nice. Machamp then comes in and we can't quite kill it in one shot, but it does have a Citrus Berry, so that takes it out of range for the heal and we can finish it off with one more Aerial Ace. Next up he's got a Hitmonlee. Hitmonlee does outspeed us with a Mega Kick, but we take it pretty well and one-shot it with Aerial Ace. And then last up is one more Onix. Somehow Onix is faster. I think it was because of the Scary Face, but then we use Surf to kill it in one shot. And that's pretty much our easiest battle of the series. Third member of the Elite Four is Agatha, and we're going to lead off with Dragonite again here. We know she has those Gengars that like to use double teams, so Aerial Ace is going to be good for us. We decided to start with Dragon Claw thinking it would do more. It does just over half, but then she's double teaming and I don't want to fool around, so we use the Aerial Ace to finish off the first one. Next up is Golbat. It hits us with a Poison Fang, but we hit back with a Blizzard and that's going to be enough to one-shot the Golbat. Third up is going to be an Arbok, and this Arbok is actually a lot more powerful than I thought. It does have Intimidate, so using Aerial Ace isn't actually doing as much damage now. We do get a crit, but then she uses a full restore since it was in red health. Now Aerial Ace isn't really doing much damage, so I decided to switch to Surf, but that does about the same. And then she is going to be able to kill us with a Sludge Bomb from there. Next up I go into Flareon. I know we have Dig. It does outspeed us and do a lot of damage, but one Dig is going to finish off this Arbok. Next up she goes into her second Gengar. And we decide to use Overheat, but it outspeeds us and takes us out. Then we go into Zapdos and I go for a Drill Peck. I figured that Drill Peck would do a lot more damage than this, but it doesn't, and she has a Citrus Berry, so we can't even kill it from there, and plus she puts us to sleep with Hypnosis. Zapdos really just doesn't want to wake up here. I think we stay asleep for like 2 or 3 turns and then enough Sludge Bombs hit that we are taken out. So I'm starting to panic a little bit here. Snorlax can't really hit this Gengar, so it's up to Lapras to finish this thing off. We decide to go for Confuse Ray and then get to work with some Surf. So it does hit itself on the first one, and a Surf is going to get it to red, but then she of course uses a full restore. So we keep going with Surf and Confuse Ray, but she puts us to sleep. Really starting to worry at this point. We're locked into a nightmare, but luckily we wake up on the next turn and we can hit it with a Confuse Ray again. So it does hit itself once, and it breaks through the second time but misses Hypnosis and allows us to take it out. Last up is a Haunter, and for some reason it goes for Curse, so that puts it in range for us to kill with a Surf. So really close battle, I think we easily could have lost that one. Last Elite Four member is Lance, and we know he leads off with a Gyarados, so we start with our Zapdos. Zapdos is going to hit a Thunderbolt, and that's going to one-shot the Gyarados, so that's pretty good to get rid of that thing right away. Next up is Aerodactyl, and we can't quite kill it with Thunderbolt, and it does a lot of damage with Ancient Power, but since it's in red, I figure if I use Thunder then we could one-shot it, but unfortunately Thunder misses. I think that was worth the try to do that, but too bad for us, Zapdos is down. So I'm trying to decide who to send in here. I decide Dragonite in the end, and we just go for a Surf. Ancient Power is doing quite a bit of damage. Rock types actually affect a lot of our team. I didn't even realize. I think 4 of the 5 members are weak to Rock. But eventually we do get rid of this Aerodactyl, it's just that we don't have much health left. Fortunately though, we do outspeed these Dragonairs, and a Dragon Claw is going to be enough to one-shot both of these Dragonairs, so that's good to get rid of those. Last up is his Dragonite. and we can't outspeed it because it's a higher level and it takes us out. We go into Lapras next, and we decide to start firing off Ice Beam. Ice Beam is just barely not enough to kill, and then he does go for a full restore. So we hit another Ice Beam, same thing, it's not quite enough to kill, but we take an Outrage pretty well and finish this thing off, and just like that, we're on to the final battle. It's now time for the final battle of the run. We've got our rival 7 battle. He's got 6 Pokemon against our 5. We know he's going to lead off with Pidgeot, so we start off with Zapdos. This time Thunderbolt isn't quite enough to kill. It is going to use a full restore, and then we hit another Thunderbolt, which just doesn't want to kill this Pidgeot. Surprisingly here, he decides to switch into Rhydon. I've never seen a rival really do that. I guess it was a smart play on his part, and now we have to switch into a rock type Pokemon, which is not amazing. So Rock Tomb is going to hit Lapras pretty hard and lower our speed, and then he's going to hit an Earthquake, which is almost going to take us out, but we can fire back with a Surf to get it in one shot. Next up is Venusaur. We decide that it's probably best to switch, so we go into Flareon here. I didn't realize that he was going to go for Solar Beam, otherwise I probably would have stayed, but either way, we go for a Flamethrower with Flareon. It doesn't quite kill, it does a decent amount of damage, but then he uses a Citrus Berry. So I decided to go for Overheat, and then we miss the Overheat. But now since the sun is up, I know Flamethrower should be able to kill from here, and then we take out the Venusaur. Next up is Gyarados. Since the sun is up, I figure it's good to take advantage of it. I decide to fire off an Overheat. Doesn't really do as much as I thought it would. I guess Flareon's special attack just isn't that great, and it takes us out with a Thrash on the next turn. So we go back into Zapdos this time. A Thunderbolt is able to kill Gyarados from this range. Then he brings back in his injured Pidgeot. Pidgeot's not much health. He uses another full restore on it, but this time Zapdos is able to one-shot with Thunderbolt finally, and we can get rid of that thing. Next up is Alakazam. We decide to go for a Drill Peck, but then he uses Reflect. Seems like he's kind of predicting our moves at this point. Thunderbolt is not quite enough to kill this Alakazam, but we do get the Paralyze. I think about switching here, but we decided to stay in with Zapdos and go for a Thunder, knowing he's going to full restore. Thunder does about half health and we get the Paralyze again, and then we survive a Psychic and hit a second Thunder to take out Alakazam. So Zapdos did really good in this battle. Last up is Arcanine. We're paralyzed, so it's going to outspeed us and take us out. Then we go into Dragonite here. Arcanine can't really touch Dragonite, so it just does extreme speed. We go for Surf, and it looks like Surf is going to two-shot this Arcanine. We take the last move pretty well, and that's going to be the end of the battle. And honestly, it was really huge in that battle to not have to use Snorlax, so we made it through the entire Elite Four with only using 4 Pokemon. So we have now beaten Pokemon Leaf Green 2 times with only using a Pokemon once per major battle, and we're actually at 92 Pokemon used out of 132, so we're on pace to have enough for 3 runs. I am going to try a 3rd run. The problem with the 3rd run though is at certain battles at certain point of the game, what Pokemon are actually going to be available to us. So I am going to make a 3rd video. We're going to see how it goes. I'm not convinced that every battle is going to be as smooth as these first 2, but I hope you guys enjoyed this one. So if you did enjoy this video, make sure you drop a like, make sure you subscribe if you want to see more of this type of stuff. We will come back with a 3rd episode regardless of how it goes, and if you want to see more of this in other games, I'm definitely interested in playing, like, I don't know, Gold and Silver, maybe Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Ruby and Sapphire. I'd love to expand this challenge to other games, so let me know in the comments what you want to see next, and yeah, we'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.